Good day everyone. Again, this is Teacher Jess, your math teacher for today, and I welcome you to our math class. For today's lesson, we are going to learn about ratio and proportion. But before we proceed, let us have first our lesson's objectives. So first, I want you to define and illustrate the meaning of ratio, equivalent ratio, rate, unit rate, and proportion, and also for you to solve problems involving ratio and proportion. So let us start. So we have here first the ratio. So what is ratio? When we say ratio, it is a comparison of two numbers or quantities. For example, we are going to compare the number of boys to the number of girls. Another example, we are going to compare the number of your pencils to number of your notebooks. What else? There are lots of example of ratio around you. So let us have this example. So I have here a set of basketballs and a set of soccer balls. What are we going to do is to count the numbers of basketball and the numbers of soccer ball. So we have 3 basketballs and 5 soccer balls. So therefore, the ratio of basketballs to soccer balls is 3 to 5. So that's the meaning of ratio. So let us proceed in different ways of writing ratios. So we have 3 ways to write ratio. Again, we have your example, the basketball and the soccer ball. So first way is using the word 2. Second, we have here a fraction, and then last, using a colon. So again, how many ways do we have in writing a ratio? Very good. So we have 3 ways. First is using the word 2. Second is a fraction. And then last is using a colon. So let us proceed in our examples. So we have here boys and girls. So we have a group of boys and a group of girls. What are we going to do is to compare their numbers. So the ratio of boys to girls is 3 to 4. So again, we have 3 ways in writing ratio. First is using the word 2. Second is using a fraction. And then last is using a colon. So let us have another example. We have here slice of cakes and bags. So the ratio of cake to bag is 5 to 4. So that's it. I hope you get the meaning of ratio. Let us proceed to equivalent ratio. When we say equivalent ratio, these are ratios that express the same relationship between numbers, meaning they still have the same value. Equivalent ratios are just like equivalent fractions. You can create equivalent ratio by multiplying or dividing the terms of the ratio. By the way, the numbers that we see in ratio is what we call terms. For example, we have 1/2. So the equivalent ratio of 1/2 is equals to 2/4. What have you noticed? Yes, we multiply it by 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Another one, we have 4/8. So the equivalent value of 1/2, 2/4 is 4/8. Again, we multiply it by 2. So that's it. That is what we call equivalent ratio. Next, we have here what we call rate. When we say rate, it is a special ratio that compares two measurements with different units. For example, we have 120 kilometers for 2 hours. So we compare the kilometers traveled and the number of hours the trip took. Next, we have 150 for 3 shirts. So we compare the amount of pesos to the number of shirts. So that is the meaning of rate. Let us proceed to unit rate. When we say unit rate, it is a rate in which the denominator is 1. From the word itself, unit, which means 1. So for example, we have here 3 Rubik's Cube and it cost 120 pesos for 3. So what we need to do is to get the unit price or the price of each Rubik's Cube. So 120 for 3, therefore we have 40 pesos for each Rubik's Cube. Therefore, the unit price of each unit cube is 40 pesos. So, we have here some exercises. What we need to do is to identify whether the given is a unit rate or not. Again, when we say unit rate, the denominator is always 1. So for letter A, we have 100 pesos per 5 sandwiches. What do you think? Very good. The answer is no, because if we make this as a ratio, this will give us 100 to 5. Therefore, the denominator or the second term is not 1. Next, 80 km per hour. Very good. The answer is yes. 80 per 1 hour. Next, we have 130 pesos per 2 kg of mangoes. The answer is no. Very good. Next, letter D. 35 pesos per kilo. What do you think is the answer? Very good. The answer is yes. 35 per 1 kilo. And then for last given, we have 12 inches per foot. The answer is yes. So I hope that you get the meaning of unit rate. So before we proceed to proportion, let us have first a recap. When we say ratio, it is a comparison of two numbers or quantities. And when we say equivalent ratios, these are ratios that express the same relationship between numbers. When we say rate, it is a special ratio that compares two measurements with different units. And then for the unit rate, it is a rate in which the denominator is always 1. So, we are done in ratio. We are going to proceed to proportion. When we say proportion, it is a statement stating that two ratios is equal. So, meaning we have two given ratios. For example, we have 1/2 is equals to 2/4. Therefore, this two given ratio is proportion. So to better understand, let us have this illustration. For example, we have two given ratios. A is to B and C is to D. What we need to do first is to identify the parts. The inner numbers, which is represented by B and C, is what we call means. And the outer numbers, which is represented by letter A and D, is what we call extremes. Please take note of this. So since we already know the means and extremes, we are now able to identify the means and extremes to our previous example. So next, let's proceed. So again, this is the illustration. What we need to do to identify whether the given ratios is proportion is to multiply the means and extremes. So we have here B times C, which is the means, and A times D, which is the extreme. So let us have our example. 1 is to 2 and 2 is to 4. First, we are going to multiply the means. So 2 times 2. And the next, we are going to multiply the extremes. 1 times 4. So the answer will be 4 equals to 4. Therefore, 1 is to 2 and 2 is to 4 is proportion. Okay, so let us proceed to our next example. We have 3 is to 5 is equals to 6 is to 10. So again, what we need to do is to identify first the means and the extremes. And then let us proceed in multiplying them. So means 5 times 6 and then the extreme is 3 times 10. Therefore, we have 30 is equals to 30. So the answer is proportion. Next, for our last example, we have 4 is to 5 is equals to 10 is to 2. So again, you need to identify first the means. The means are 5 and 10. The extremes are 4 and 2. And then let us multiply 5 times 10 and 4 times 2. The answer will be 50 is not equals to 8. So since they are not equal, this is not proportion. So that's it. I hope that you learned something new today about ratio and proportion. See you on our next lesson. God bless and stay safe.